Thank you for joining us on This Is Exclusive, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7 p.m. And on This Is Exclusive, we are coming to you live on the biggest business headline of 2026. It's a deal that will directly impact up to 2 billion people. Did India gain more, or does European Union gain more? We will have some perspective on that with two people who know exactly what matters in the deal, joining us live on the show tonight, along with some exclusive inputs we have on the airline blackmail on This Is Exclusive. That's coming up at around 7:15. First up, the headlines this evening.
आज भारत ने अपने इतिहास का अब तक का सबसे बड़ा फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट संपन्न किया है.
We did it. We delivered the mother of all deals.
India and European Union ink an historic trade agreement. Deal will help facilitate 25% of total global trade. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says FTA is a breakthrough in ties after 20 years, welcomes new chapter and partnership. Pakistan continues to call the shots about a possible boycott of the T20 World Cup. 9 months after Pahalgam, we are still thinking, should we play, should we not play, should we entertain Pakistan or should we entertain Bangladesh? What an irony. Indigo, Air India, SpiceJet, other airlines pushing for FDTL rules relaxation a few months after the Indigo chaos. The blackmail is now complete. Thank you for staying with us on This Is Exclusive. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go across to our guests from European Union and people who worked in European Union on this deal perhaps for a long time, let's tell you what this deal means for India and Indians. First up, who gains more? Let's take a look at some of the details of this particular deal on your screen. We will have the details of who gains more, because that is more important. Right now, when you look at the details of what European Union gains, tariffs on over 90% of European Union goods have been cut. Over $4.7 billion a year saved in customs duties alone. It gives edge for European Union exporters in Indian markets. Easier access for finance and maritime services. Now, what does India really gain? Many people asking, what do we gain? Why is it important for India? India-European Union trade will now grow beyond $136 billion. Duties of nearly 96.6% of European Union exports will be cut. Duties on aircraft, spacecraft exports have been cut. More access for agricultural and processed food exports. Cheaper imports of European cars and medical equipment. In fact, there was a lot of buzz around European cars, but even in that, there are some limitations. We have details of that. We will be going across to those details in just a bit. But first up, let me introduce our two guests on the show. I have with us Per Clausen. Per Clausen is a member of Union Parliament, a member of a European Parliament. He's an MEP. He's from Denmark. He's joining us on This Is Exclusive. And I also have Manjeev Singh Puri. Good evening, Mr. Puri. Manjeev Singh Puri has been the former ambassador of India to the European Union. So we have someone who's worked from the Indian side in India representing the European Union joining us live, and someone who's sitting inside the European Parliament also joining us live. First, let me get the European perspective first, because the European Union chief is here. Per Clausen, you've been very vocal about Europe having to cut off any possible trade with America. In fact, I saw a statement that you put out saying that to teach Trump a lesson, you had to halt that trade. Right? And you guys have halted the trade talks with America for now. What is your take on this big deal that India signed? Ursula von der Leyen says it's the mother of all deals.
I think we'll still make trade with the United States, but we need to have a much better cooperation with India. Lots of different places, I think, and this agreement, I think, is very, very important because it gives the European country better possibilities to make trade with India, and it also, I think, is a good thing for India. So I think it's very, very important because it gives both India and Europe better possibilities to be independent in our relationship to the United States. And I think for Europe, it's very, very important to be more independent in our relationship with the United States. And this agreement, I think, is a very important way to go in this direction.
Yeah. Mr. Puri, if I can get your views on this deal. I mean, and I'm sure you've had details of the talks that have been ongoing for several decades now, 2 decades, if I'm not wrong, is what Piyush Goyal said. Who wins? Everyone's asking who wins. Does the European Union get more? Does India get more? What's your take on it?
Thank you very much, Niranjan. And I'm very happy to see a colleague from the European Parliament here. Look, let me go to the Prime Minister to you. There is shared prosperity in this. These are trade negotiations. They are not about one country gaining and the other losing. They are about shared prosperity, and that's exactly what we've done. Now, this may have been, let me say, more than pushed because of the transatlantic turbulence. Well, so be it. We didn't ask for that turbulence. Neither did actually the European Union. But if we do this, they do multi-alignment. We foster our ideas of multi-alignment. And I dare say we both win, but so does the global South in general, and in fact, the world in general by itself. The way I look at it is there are opportunities for us to take our trade forward. But Niranjan, let me be very clear. In my opinion, given the fact that the European Union is the second largest economy in the world, today several $1 trillion ahead of the Chinese. This and a huge technology base. This is a great opportunity for us to be able to leverage them for our dreams of Viksit Bharat. We get their companies to invest in India. Believe me, companies invest when they also look at what are the trade possibilities, not just the domestic market. When we ease this, we signal to them that the governments are there, the institutional arrangements are there, protectionism is going to be lowered, and there is legal certainty. Please invest in India. The Indian market is there for you, and the global market opens up. We develop, the European unions get benefit, and there's a general large win-win among the world's 2 largest democracies, obviously the largest among the world's largest economies, although there's a great asymmetry between where the European Union is and we are today. But hopefully, many of these things will lead to a kind of our going upwards and Viksit Bharat by 2047.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get Per Clausen, what is the symbolism around this? There is obviously a message that's going out because we saw the Americans weren't happy. There was some nasty comment made by Donald Trump's aide. I think his name is Lutnick or something. He's not happy about this deal. They're sort of looking at it in a very cynicism, with a lot of cynicism, right? So what is the symbolism, the message that India and Europe are together sending to America and Donald Trump?
I think we're sending the message that Donald Trump is not a man who is in power in Europe. The work we will do, but we think it's necessary to have our own sovereignty, and I think that's a deal pact with India here is very important in that. And I would say to Trump threatened people. He threatened Canada because they made a deal with China, and he wants himself to make deals with China, but he wants to threaten the countries in the Western world, also European Union. And I think it's very important to show him that we could make deals, we could make agreements with other countries in the world, and India is a very, very big country, very, very important country to have a good relation with. So I'm very, very happy that it sounds that we have this agreement. I must say we now have to read all what's written to the small, because we should be sure that this agreement also is good for ordinary people in Europe, and I think for ordinary people in India. But I think it will be in that way, and I hope we could manage this agreement. And we have to have a democratic process in Europe as every time. But I hope it will be relatively easy to do that.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Puri, one last question with you, sir. What do you think is the message that we've sent out to America? And how does this change things, if at all?
Let me first say this. The Americans have got whatever message they want. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had several negative things to say. Fine, that's fine. But, we never asked them to start this. These are, trade and flag are two sides of the same coin. They started it. The great message is the European Union, the second largest economy in the world, has signaled that they believe that India is a country of significance and consequence also for them domestically. That shows, in a sense, the acceptance of India as not just a middle power, as Prime Minister Carney said, but as a major emerging power. That's particularly important. From our side, the big gain is the signaling that we are giving to European corporates. India is a trusted partner. It's a trusted partner with now certainty in legal terms. Come invest in India. India's growth results in betterment as far as you are concerned. And as I mentioned to you, there's shared prosperity for us, and we believe for the world. The Americans, thank you very much, whatever you did. But nobody says you're out. You're welcome to participate. But a rules-based order is perhaps a better order, including for you, but that's your decision. We, on our side, are deciding that we will do multi-alignment. We will look at different partners. And I'm glad that the European Union and India have both agreed to something that they knew for a long time. But the little nudge and push is always required in these things. And very happy that it's happened. It's a red letter day for all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Perklausen and Mr. Puri, for joining us on the show. It's a big day for Indian markets. In fact, even Indian bodies, trade bodies like the CI and FICCI, very, very optimistic about what this deal now does for businesses in India and also in Europe. Let's move on now and get you an exclusive story that we've been tracking here on Republic TV. It's on the airline blackmail, and each one of you remember, ladies and gentlemen, when the Indigo chaos happened, when close to 1 million passengers were directly affected. Why did the Indigo chaos happen? Because of something called the FDTL rules. Now, it is clear now that all the airlines have united. They've all come together. Basically, Indigo's come together with Air India, and they've now come together with SpiceJet, Akasa, everyone, because they want the government to permanently relax the FDTL norms. And Republic has the details. In fact, there is a chart that one of the points that airlines tried to make is to say that they did not have enough pilots. They tried to say they don't have enough manpower to enforce the FDTL rules. But take a look at this chart on your screen. Now, what this chart shows you is which airline has how many pilots versus the requirement of pilots and the surplus pilots on their rolls. And when you look at this, when you look at the entire chart, Air India has a surplus of 414 pilots, Air India Express surplus of 171 pilots, Indigo surplus of 467 pilots, Akasa Air surplus of 367 pilots, SpiceJet has lesser pilots than required. But what it shows you is that they don't really have any shortage when it comes to pilots. When there are enough number of pilots, why are they going to the government and asking for FDTL rules to be relaxed? Now, what this confirms is, Shravan, this manufactured crisis that we saw during Indigo is now coming a full circle. This is exactly what they wanted. They used the Indigo chaos to go to the government and then say, hey, listen, we don't have pilots, or it's going to happen again. You've looked at the details, documents. Shravan, what does it confirm?
Well, in fact, let me try and explain why exactly have the airlines all come together demanding that the FDTL norms to be changed. The reason being is that it has a direct impact as far as operations are concerned, which would essentially mean that the pilots would be given more rest. The number of days basically goes up, which means that they will have to bring down on the number of flight operations that they essentially do. And that's exactly why you've had bigger airlines, particularly like Indigo, having a problem with this entire issue. Of course, at that point in time, Air India wasn't really vocal about this. Akasa did not have much of a say in this entire matter. But the biggest, the impact was particularly with Indigo, because you're looking at over 3,200 flight operations essentially getting directly impacted, because as per the roster, you would have had to perhaps improve the number of hours that you're giving to the pilots. In fact, the Pilot Association time and again have basically raised concerns about the fact that a single pilot is essentially asked to stretch beyond the norms, and that is the reason why the FDTL norms were basically tweaked. In fact, there was a court intervention following which you've had the airlines really stepping in and accepting those terms. Now, what's also important to highlight is that the Aviation Ministry and particularly the regulatory body is equally responsible for this, because the regulatory body has essentially accepted the time that has been given to them to make the necessary changes as far as the rosters are concerned.
Yeah, I want to show that table once again, because that sort of busts the lie. Let's go to that table once more. So it's not as if these airlines are short of pilots. They say they don't have enough pilots for the FDTL norms. Now, why are FDTL norms important? Flight duty time limitations govern how pilots work in shifts, get adequate rest, because pilots need to be rested. Some of the airlines are used to making pilots work overtime, and they don't like the fact that pilots are getting rest. Point number one. Point number two, this FDTL is being brought to mitigate fatigue in pilots and overhaul the safety mechanism in Indian aviation. It's going to ensure better air travel safety. But Indigo has a problem. Let's go back to the numbers, please, because the story is in the numbers. And if you look at these numbers, it just busts that lie. Each one of them, except for SpiceJet, has surplus pilots. Now, this is where the story stands. Wanted to get you these numbers and the details that we've picked up of a meeting. They've gone to the Civil Aviation Ministry and tried to meet the minister and arm twist. That's where the story stands. Republic tracking the story carefully and watching every update. Airlines hoping that we don't have our eyes on that development, but we do. Watching it closely. Thank you for joining us, Shravan. That's it on this edition of This is Exclusive, ladies and gentlemen. Arnab coming up with two big debates. The big cricket debate is at 8 p.m. Why are we still talking about playing with Pakistan, entertaining Pakistan's tantrums? That debate at 8. And who really wins with the India-EU trade deal at 9 p.m. Stay tuned. Co-powered by Century Ply